Hello, my friends, and welcome to End Times Analysis. I'm Pastor Jeff. Get a cup of coffee, take a seat, and let us reason together. We are going to start where we ended last night. This is Ezekiel 38, verse 9, part 2. And I'm going to read it for us. It's coming out of the King James. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. I love these flyover scriptures, as people call them, or these flyover verses, that they have so much meat, so many things we can learn, but we pass over them many times to get to where Gog is making his plan. We come off like the first couple of verses, we skip a bunch in the middle, then we go to that one. But now we are really digging in. So where we ended last night, where we were talking about the number of troops and how sometimes when there's not enough of them, they won't be as motivated because they're wondering, if I go in and I get myself in trouble, who's going to pull me out? Where are the reinforcements? Can I call for help and somebody come and save me? Gog's army is not going to have this problem. They are going to have an overabundance of troops. This is not a surgical strike. They're not going to need to call 30, 50,000 men and have a surge later on like we did in Iraq and like we did in Afghanistan and even like we did in Vietnam. We were constantly calling for more men until the government said no. This is going to have more than enough. Plus, as it says, they were riding on horses. They were coming in. So that means they're probably going to have some armor, probably the old Soviet Russian thing of the mechanized forces, the tank armies, as they used to call it, with combined with tank, artillery, rocket fire, even chemical defense, along with 2 to 4, maybe if sometimes even 5 mechanized divisions. So this army is going to have a lot of men, plus they're going to have the allies. But we have also, remember, we talked about when the armies don't feel that. They don't feel like they're supported. They don't feel like they have enough men. They will hold back. They will not be as motivated. Gog is not going to have this problem. The Soviet Union was not the only one with this problem when they went into Afghanistan, or their forces not wanting to go in. The U.S. and Vietnam, according to the North Vietnamese Army, the NVA, especially towards the end of U.S. military involvement when we were doing the Vietnamization, turning the war back over to the South Vietnamese, they said our troops didn't really want to leave the fire support base. Now, this is not all the troops and not all the Russians would not go up and engage with the enemy. But what they're saying is a large portion or majority of the troops did not want to leave their fire support, the Russians and us, due to not enough forces. Like I said, who is going to pull me out? Can I call and get some support if all of a sudden everything turns sour? If everything goes south fast, who's going to help me save my life and get me out of here? So, if you do not have enough ground forces, you have a lot of men who are maybe conscript drafted in. They don't know what they're fighting for. They don't know why they're there. You will have this thing of not wanting to go off and engage the enemy. Now, it seems Russia and Gog, I'm going to say Gog, learned from Afghanistan. You must move forward and engage with the enemy. So they decided this conflict of Gog and Magog war to bring in a lot of coalition forces. I want you to remember the Americans, they had some allies in Vietnam, and the Russians did not really have that many, if any, allies, with the exception of their Afghanistan allies. In Afghanistan, there is something that some Cubans were there, and there were some Czechoslovakians who were taking care of a lot of the jet airplanes that were coming. But really, the Russians did not call upon their Warsaw Pact allies. You didn't see Hungarian engineers or Polish security or Bulgarian or Romanian. Any of those were not really called upon. So why didn't they use it? Yeah, some of that still are still being found out. Some people said they didn't want to put the pressure on them, that this war was not popular. And of course, the governments in Eastern Europe weren't popular to begin with. So they left that out and they took this upon themselves. The Soviet manpower shortage was a crucial element of why they could not secure Afghanistan. So Gog decides to use overwhelming force to engage their opponent, the old Colin Powell doctrine. Remember, Colin Powell was our general. He was a general in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, but he cut his teeth in combat in Vietnam. And he saw that where overwhelming force was not used, it was incremental. It was a piecemeal. Okay, they do this. Now we're going to engage this way. They try this. We're going to engage with a minimum or this force in order to what we call punish them so they will not try. It didn't work. It did not work. The body counts, everything else, it just didn't work. So Colin Powell came up with a doctrine that he used in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, which was overwhelming force. Gog is going to use this theory. What is the plan? What is the planning during the later stages of the post-Soviet period? Remember, we believe Gog is Russia. He is going to get some plans. He's not going to reinvent the wheel. He is going to get plans from, of course, current Russia, but also the old Soviet Union. During the Soviet Union period, General Secretary Andropov, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, it was Brezhnev, Andropov, Tsarenko, Gorbachev, and then, of course, the Soviet Union fell. But Andropov, after Brezhnev died, he was the one who came in, had a plan to make the Soviet army as large as NATO and the People's Republic of China, PRC, combined. And he, along with, brought in other plans, but he was coordinating the plan to devise a long-range force projection plan. Let me explain. So the Russians have a military plan. Now, I'm not saying it's totally completed or it will fit with our day. Remember, there's been some years between the fall of the Soviet Union in 91 till now. So, of course, it's going to have to be revamped. But the Soviet at least had the foundation for conducting large-scale, long-range military operations away from Russia proper, away from the Soviet Union borders. And they are using coalition forces. So now they have jumping off spaces. They're going to have land, sea, and air resources, plus the logistics of their coalition partners. God is the supreme teacher. He is the best. So when God keeps coming back to a point, and the point he keeps coming back to over and over again is the size of Gog's army and coalition forces. It means something. This is a coalition of formerly communist countries and Islamic nations. Here's where I'm going to get myself in trouble. I don't think Gog is Putin. His mentality so far in military operations in the Ukraine, and remember, he has Russian forces involved in Syria, is minimalist, cautious, use what we have to use in order to get the job done. He believes in the defense. His forces, as we see in Ukraine and even in a lot of places in Syria, he draws the line and then lets the enemy just keep pounding against the line until they wear away. A grinding away, not a deep penetration movement, not using flanking and breakout tactics. What Putin is willing to do is take the ground, hold the ground, and let the other side military keep pounding until it wears away its forces. This is if you think about it, is kind of a defense that the old czarists used. If the czars would have been allowed, and their generals would have been allowed to fight World War I in their way, the outcome of the war might have been a lot different for the Russian point, and for the communists. I don't think the communists ever would have got there. But because the Russian Empire was getting a lot of materials from France and England, they were being pressured to go on to a lot of offensives. They were pressured to push their forward to sap away a lot of the German military, which was threatening Paris, France. So their tactic was to hold the ground, give away give away slowly, and do scorched earth. That's what they did against Napoleon. That's what they did against some other enemies they had gone up against. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to make you pay for the ground you take. I'm going to withdraw slowly, and then once you are been swallowed by the size of Russia, the Soviet Union, once your logistics is totally stretched, I'm going to cut your logistics. Then I'm going to do offensives and push you away. Putin is more like the czarist military mentality than he is Stalin. He is using the revolution in military tactics where long range missiles, air defense, air power, rockets are being used for pinpoint strikes in enemy territories. He's going after logistics. He's going after things. He is not going for large offensive movements that's going to cost the Russians a large group of men. He is using standalone artillery. He is moving ground forces under tactical cover. This is not the tactics of Gog, where he is using coalition forces, deep penetration, fast movement. It talks about clouds. It talks about storms. It talks about men coming in on the horses. These are fast, more like blitzkrieg movements. Think of the closest I could think. I'm going to have to combine here. Think of what we did in Iraq under George Bush, the fast-moving forces, but with overwhelming numbers. This individual, this Gog, is going to be so inclined in military. He is going to be able to use blitzkrieg tactics, not with just tanks and air power, but with large manpower armies. I'm sorry, not with just tanks and air cover, but with large manpower style armies, and go deep and go fast. Hit the enemy and keep at it and keep going into there. But like I said, he's going against the mountains of Israel. So he is going to need, he's thinking this is a great defensive position. So I am going to need overwhelming forces in order to take it. These are the tactics of Gog, where he's using coalition forces, deep penetration, fast movements into enemy territory, supplying his military from a distance. Putin, even in Syria, is working in conjunction with Israel and the United States to go against ISIS or Daesh. Well, I'm going to stop right here. We're going to have a Ezekiel 38:9 part 3. So thank you very much for watching an End Times Analysis. If you've liked it and found this informative, please hit the like and the subscribe button. Until next time, my friends, Maranatha.